I'm your host, David Gornoski, and we're back for another conversation with our good friend Tucker Goodrich. We used to do this all the time, a little 30-minute segments on radio each week. And it's great to have him back here to weigh in on the Make America Healthy Again initiative that seems to have a lot of progress right now, at least narratively. And we got to get into the brass tacks of how this would actually look. So Tucker joins us now to speak. How you doing, Tucker?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing
Good to
well
see you
too.
as always.
Yeah, and we just had a recent conversation about what we'd like to see happen and the food pyramid, the guidelines and all that right before the election, and now here we are after the election, and we certainly have a much better opportunity to see some hopeful change in this country's food system and dietary information with this new incoming administration than we would have had if Kamala Harris would have been elected. There would be no opportunity, I think, for any kind of serious conversation. They certainly didn't signal as such.
Well,
Yeah.
they did signal just before the election happened. The dietary guidelines panel came out and said that they wanted to cut back their recommendation for eating meat.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, that was a solid signal there of what they had planned and
Interesting.
as far
Yeah.
as the bureaucracy goes, still plans on
Yeah,
doing.
for sure. Yeah, they're still got knives out for meat, and it's not to eat it, is it? Right?
That's right.
It's
That's
to
right. Well
it's to
put.
it's to kill the cows, not and then not let us enjoy the steaks inside. Right? It's sad, huh?
Yes,
But
it's frustrating.
you know, change is always afoot. Right now, the concrete of a new administration is not set, right? It's still mushy. You can still build something with this mix. It hasn't set yet. And so there's an opportunity to do something, hopefully. And I have to say this up front. I am under no illusions that government will do anything really good. I have sub-zero expectations of all governments, including this one. I do. I really
Right.
do. But with I keeping those expectations low, there's always possibilities for wins. There's always possibility for human beings to do the right thing. And that's why I'm excited to see what we can do to shape the conversation in the media landscape and both, hopefully, maybe somebody in the position of power to help on that end too. So,
Oh, totally agree with that.
so what do you want to see happen to make America healthy again?
Well, here's 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 our first problem. First, I want to say the most important thing we can do is continue doing as we have been doing, which is getting the word out there, making people understand that the advice that they've been getting from the government and from their physicians and from the dietary authorities has been bad, and encouraging people to fix their own diets, right? That's going to cause pressure on corporations to change, and corporations at the end of the day, God bless them, are mostly mercenaries, and all they really care about is making a buck. And if they need to change their ingredients to keep people, their customers happy, that's what they're going to do, right? So that's the most important thing that we can continue doing. Somebody commented to me the other day, something came up about the Department of Education, and somebody posted me a clip of Trump saying he wanted to get rid of it. And they were like, well, Trump says he's going to get rid of it. And my response was, Reagan said he was going to get rid of
Yeah,
it and he failed.
yeah, that was 35 years ago, right? So, or
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
or longer. I
So,
know longer than that. Yeah, 40.
so unfortunately, our government is designed to be resistant to change. And unfortunately, the Republican Party has been totally unwilling to roll back virtually everything that the progressives have ever done, right? I mean, all the way back to the Fed, right? So likely it's not going to work. Let's just be realistic about that.
But
And
that's
I'm
not the
sorry.
Yeah, but here's the thing, okay? You can't signal that energy because,
So, well,
yeah, you can have that as a private thought, but you can't have that
no,
as
no, no,
the,
no, 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 because you can't actually fix a problem until you can address it correctly,
yeah,
right? So how are we going to do that, right? We can't do it just by relying on Bobby Kennedy, God bless him,
right.
right? We're going to have to, I mean, it would be fantastic if he could become, I don't know if Secretary of HHS is the right position for him, but that's something somebody people have mentioned. We
That's what I've been
clearly
mentioning.
have.
That's what I want. I think he should have a real position of power over the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, and a whole host of other areas. And that Secretary of HHS position would do just that. So,
Right, but the problem with that is the Secretary of Agriculture runs the USDA, which runs the dietary guidelines.
right. But there'll be great people
So,
over there too, hopefully, you know? So,
yeah, well, right. So the problem, let's say we can get him through the Senate, they're going to fight tooth and nail against him. He's going to have the pharmaceutical industry against him. He's going to have the vast majority of physicians in the country against him. He's going to have the Democratic Party against him. He's going to have most probably biological scientists against him, right? It's going to be a huge job getting him into office. And then when he gets into office, really the only thing, so the biggest problem is where is he going to find people to staff these agencies, right? I mean, let's just say that the best thing, which I think he should do, is fire the vast number of political appointees, right?
yeah.
And try and find more people to staff them, right? There's
Mhm.
some people who are really amenable to this sort of message, but they're not a lot of them. So it's going to be really tough to try and restaff those agencies to, as some people have suggested, fix the dietary guidelines. I think what's really going to happen is simultaneously with trying to gut those bureaucracies, we're going to have to, we're going to need to pass some laws. The dietary guidelines cannot be fixed. Okay. Congress has already passed a law saying that they are broken and that they need to be fixed. And let me quote this. In 2017, two landmark studies from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine delivered a critical verdict. The development process lacked scientific rigor and transparency, leading to guidelines that were not, quote unquote, trustworthy. The reports made 11 concrete recommendations to improve rigor and transparency in the guidelines process. Yet, shockingly, follow-up evaluations in 2022 and 2023 revealed that the USDA had fully implemented none of them. The woman who wrote this used to be the chairman of the Dietary Guidelines Committee. So we're not going to fix it, right? The nutritional scientists who, I think 90% of the people on the Dietary Guidelines Scientific Advisory Committee are members of the American Society of Nutrition, right? And they're the people who've foisted ultra processed foods on the country ever since the dietary guidelines were passed, right? That is their mission in life. So they're not going to get fixed. We're going to have to push to get rid of them, right? Just to say, okay, we're going to repeal this section of the law, and the government is not going to give you dietary
And
recommendations
I'm not saying you're
anymore.
a constitutional scholar, but do you think, in your opinion, that would be done at the executive level, or would it have to be a legislation? Because legislation, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, it's going to have to be legislation. You could theoretically do it in the courts because
See, to
there
me,
was
I'm a
a
little
general.
old school, like Ron Paul would say on this, which is, where's the constitutional authority to have food guidelines in the first place? Which means if Congress created this and then creates it as
Well,
this unelected bureaucracy, it's an
in the
unlawful act.
Constitution, one of the things the government's supposed to do is look after our welfare. So
Oh,
they're going to
well,
argue this is welfare.
well, that's not true.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
The welfare clause, that's a liberal argument. Nobody would even buy that in real constitutional law. That's like stupid like that's old school left wing arguments that the welfare clause allows for that.
Bad
Article
news,
one,
David. The old school left-wing argument has been running the country for a
and
hundred
they're all
years.
about to die too because they're 89 years old and up. So yeah, welcome to look. You want to see what the old leftist brand is? Go look at Joe Biden chewing on his tongue right now. That's where it's going. Nancy Pelosi, bye bye. It's
Right.
going.
Okay. Okay.
That's the people that push that stupid stuff. They don't have any power and they don't have any cultural sway. I mean, I know they do in the sense of the bureaucratic deep state. I get it.
But
But
I'm not worried about the Democrats. I'm worried about the Republicans,
yeah, and they just
right?
they're
The
the useful
Republicans,
they're the useful junior party at the table that always just does whatever, they're told. So
well, as Ted Cruz called them, the surrender caucus.
Yeah.
And I think he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And they keep, and when you get a bunch of Republican congressmen sitting up there and a bunch of doctors hit them with all this jargon and
Yeah.
tell them that they're going to be killing millions of people if they cut seed oils out of the diet, those guys are going to fold so fast,
Yeah.
right? So now the other argument is that there's a major religious component to the dietary guidelines, right? And
And
it's
Tucker
illegal
got
to have an
it.
establishment of religion, right? The most of nutrition science was founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who has their own particular views on what constitutes a healthy diet. And we won't get into the theological conversation there. They founded the profession of dietitian. In the last group of dietary guideline scientific advisory committee, a gentleman by the name of, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, Yuan Sabate, was one of the members. And he is notable because he is a self-described medical missionary for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, promoting a vegetarian diet. And
Mm.
so, what is the dietary guidelines coming around and doing? They're pushing vegetarianism again, right? They don't have any science to back it up. It's a religious motivation, and you can't establish religion in the United States. It's against the First Amendment.
So how come, has that been contested in a court of law or a constitutional challenge at the?
So long as I've seen it, no. I mean, most of Nina Teacholt runs a group called the Nutritional Coalition, which has been battling against the dietary guidelines for years, and they've mainly focused on corporations. She's only just recently started getting into pointing out that some of these people have ideological conflicts of interests. I mean, it's been noted that if you publish a scientific paper in nutrition science, you have to list your uh, corporate conflicts,
Yeah.
but you don't have to list if you have a religious belief that everybody should eat a vegetarian
Interesting.
diet, right?
Interesting.
That just totally flies under the radar, and I think that's a big mistake because there are lots of us who don't share that religious belief, and I certainly, you know,
Yeah, we will respect
I mean, if the
all.
Adventists want to do that for
Yeah,
themselves, that's
we
wonderful.
want to respect
Same with
all religious views, but we don't
Yeah,
want
same with
religion
Buddhists or
imposed on
Hindus or
us.
anyone else. But I don't think that as a matter of federal policy, that they should be pushing that on the rest of us while pretending that they're doing research and doing science.
So you're saying that they're not really interested in just changing their mind. They have a set ideology and they don't want to change, right? They want to
Congress
really.
has ordered them to change and
Mhm,
they've refused.
mhm.
So it's not what I'm saying, it's what they've done,
Right. Yeah.
right? And I mean, there's and this is not, I generalize when I say dietitians and nutrition science. I think there are definitely people in nutrition science who are good scientists. But I mean, there's a fellow, David Klurfeld, who is one of the top researchers at the USDA, who talked about his experience in the World Health Organization when they came out with their recommendation or their advisory that cancer causes, or that meat causes cancer.
Mhm.
And he pointed out 30% of the people on the committee were vegetarians or vegans, and that their outcome was predetermined from the very beginning. And they
Right.
didn't look at any evidence that could contradict their predetermined conclusion.
Yeah.
Right. So we clearly have a
Because that,
bias.
for folks who don't understand the Seventh Day Adventist religion, is it a part of their doctrine? It's not. Is it a dogmatic kind of doctrine that you have to not eat meat? Right. You can't.
That's correct.
Yeah. It's not like an option. You have to not eat meat. For those who don't know, but
Well,
a lot of folks.
I mean, look, I'm not an Adventist.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on
No, but yeah,
yeah, but in general, yes, they promote a vegetarian or a vegan diet.
yeah. And so it's like part of their calling card. Like, maybe you would say Pentecostals are known for speaking in tongues and that kind of thing, charismatic, right? And so Seventh-day Adventists are known for advocating a vegetarian diet, right? So, with that said, you're saying, and you have said over the years, I recall on my show and many other times, that there is this long history between Seventh-day Adventists and the field of dietitians, right? First, for the
Right.
folks at
The field,
home.
the profession of dietitian was founded by a Seventh-day Adventist who
So,
was a
as Rush
lieutenant of
Limbaugh
one
would
of the
say,
founders of the church.
for those in Rio Linda, what is the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist? Which probably all of us don't know, but go just picking on Rio Linda for old
God, as
time's
far
sake.
as I know, I mean, there may be some difference in terms of training and certification, but at the end of the day, they're both in the business of telling you what you should be eating.
So why
You
is
know,
there like a different sort of I don't understand. Is it like who designated those terms? Like,
dietitian was created by the Adventist. I don't know where nutrition came
yeah,
from. I mean, that's kind of getting a little bit, it's an interesting question. I'll look into it,
right.
um,
I'm
but
just curious, where these things come from and how the Seventh-day Adventists had such a role in shaping the term dietitian, which some people would just say is synonymous with the word nutritionist. Sounds like.
yeah,
Um,
I would interpret it that way. But
yeah,
there are all sorts of fine gradations and certifications that I'm not an expert on.
okay, fair enough. Well, you mentioned that the government would come out full force and push back on Kennedy or anybody trying to touch their precious seed oils. And speaking of the government, we have to turn to American Pravda itself, the New York Times, with this headline just published right before we talked. Are seed oils actually bad for you? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others claim that they're harming our health, but the evidence suggests otherwise. So go ahead and, just like they told you before, when they tell you to go 6 feet to stop the spread, the evidence from on high has commanded you to not listen and look into seed oils.
Yeah, I need to come. I haven't read this yet. I don't subscribe to the New York Times because I think it's a waste of time. And I'm
Me
sure this
neither. That's
article
why all
is,
I read was the headline because it said you had
yeah,
to pay for the rest. And I said, well, that's all I can give them then.
yeah, exactly. I haven't subscribed to the New York Times since the 1990s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, and I need to come up with a generic rebuttal. I just published yet another rebuttal on my blog, talking about cardiovascular disease health that was published by a number of eminent nutrition science dietitian people. And it was the same thing that they always do. They cherry pick, they neglect evidence, and they misrepresent the evidence that we do have to ignore the things that have clearly indicated that seed oils are harmful in the diet, right? And they pretty much have the same script every time they go through something. And that's why we cannot fix these people, this thing, if these people are still involved in it. And I don't see any way, just because, in my experience, there are a handful of nutrition people that you encounter online who are, I would say, scientific, right? And the vast majority of them, like the 90% of them who are now running the Dietary Guidelines Scientific Advisory Committee, are just ideologues.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't replace them. There aren't enough. They've been weeding people out of these professions for so long and attacking people like Tim Noakes or Gary Fettke, who or Steve Cooksey, who is a blogger down in North Carolina, who say anything that goes against their doctrine, for instance, that cutting back on carbohydrates might be good for diabetic,
Yeah.
which is basic science and something we've known since the 1920s, and yet they fight it tooth and nail, and they're making people really sick by doing this. So they've got to go.
Yeah. You've made a point before, and I want you to say it here again, since where we're at in history needs it to happen and needs to be heard, that there was already laws on the books in the more modern sense of these laws, I like to go to the old Constitution. There is no guideline for a food pyramid. Shut it down. That's what I would do if I
Yep.
was president. I'd say, whoever I'm picking, you just fire everybody relentlessly, and you hold up the Constitution as your authority, and just fire them and have a good time. But you don't have that same
I mean,
energy when you're 77. It's a different energy. It's okay. It's okay. Everybody has to play their role, but you
right.
have to do something at some point. The founders were all like 30 and stuff. That's why they had more energy. But anyway, you know what I mean? You can fight a war and get on a horseback and start a country when you're a little bit more youthful. But regardless of that, we take what we can, and we don't want to diminish anybody's opportunity to do good. But this is going to be an epic battle for the ages, because Kennedy's not going to back down. And
No.
if he gets pushed out, that's not going to look good for Trump when he put Kennedy up there on almost every ad about how wonderful it is to have the dream team here. And you got Nicole Shanahan in the ads too, and she's another big advocate of this message from the ag standpoint and the health freedom abs standpoint at the FDA and so forth. So you can't just shut them out, right? So even if they try to marginalize and give them little token jobs that are not really that are kind of toothless, that's not going to fly for long, because people like us are going to say, well, Kennedy, what are you doing? And if he's got nothing to show for it, then it's going to look toothless. And he feels that
Yeah,
God
but
gave him a mandate to stop childhood chronic diseases within what, 240 years, he said. So if he's truthful about that, then he's going to fight like hell to fight for that. And that's why we need
well,
to do what we can to
a-
support
and
that message.
God bless him, but the Senate might not approve him,
But
right?
there's
This isn't
positions
just up to Trump.
besides, like national security advisor doesn't require any Senate approval. And there's positions like that. I'm sure there's a title that's very similar to that for the HHS and for ag or whatever, that has a similar kind of role, which it has a lot of power. The NSA, National Security Advisor, not to be confused with the NSA spying group, but they're a gathering group. But the NSA has a very big bully pulpit and a big influential role for foreign policy. There's got to be probably a lot of positions like that as it relates to health and all that. So
Yeah, and I mean
we
that
just
may
got to
be the
keep
best,
having Kennedy's back.
Okay, there's got to be a position for Kennedy somewhere to land with some serious teeth behind it, because I'm telling you this, if Trump doesn't deliver on the Make America Healthy Again part, if he doesn't deliver big wins, that he's going to go down as a big, big, big disappointment, because to have this level of a mandate that a Republican hasn't had in decades, and to throw it all away because of the usual suspects coming around in the swamp, that will be an awful, awful way to have his legacy go out.
I completely agree with that. But, back to what I said at the beginning. At the end of the day, we all have to feed ourselves every day, and we have to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And we can't rely on, I mean, God, I pray that they succeed in doing what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
but we can't sit around and wait for it.
So we got to do what we got to do to move the culture, move the market, move the media, everything we can, all hands on deck. We need a whole army, and I hope that army is developing as we speak. I think it is. It's kind of like Gideon's army. You can win a battle with 300 people with pots and pans if you do it right. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's what we
Yep.
proved. That's what we proved, by the way, with the Ron Paul Elon Musk alliance. That was put together right here on the show, and that shifted hundreds of thousands of votes over to Trump's column. That wasn't my
Yeah.
intention. It was not my intention was just to see if Ron could help Elon, literally. And he didn't endorse Trump or anything, but he did get an opportunity, and he still has an opportunity to have this conversation with Elon very publicly. So, and what a critical time that comes, right? That shifts the Overton window. I hate that word. We got to come up with a better word, but it shifts the paradigm of what's possible when you see that thing happening in real time. So that gives me great courage. And I have to say, Tucker, I'm recruiting you. I want you to be in the game. Now the good thing, you got a lot of great things. Now, you may not be an MD, but you are a former Wall Street guy. And I know Republicans like former Wall Street guys when it comes to, understanding how the world works, right? So
Well, the fact that I'm not an MD is my best qualification for getting nutritional science correct, because MDs don't get any training in it. So
that's right. Yeah. But, note to like you said, those guys on Wall in DC, they don't even know that yet. They expect that MDs are taught everything about carrots and everything, but
right.
that's not the case. But I want you to join? And I know you're a free market guy, you're a private sector guy, but would you help the administration if there was an opportunity to help kind of get the
Oh,
facts?
I'd love to. I mean, this is the single most important battle that we have, right? I mean, what's happening to this country, we cannot sustain this path. And I do believe that a major reason for not only the physical health, but the mental health decline that we see in this country is because of what's the catastrophic changes that have been made to our diet over the last 60, 70 years. And, you know, children, the number of children who are going to be unable to function as members of society is up to like 1 in 38 now, 1 in 22 in California. That's up from 1 in 10,000. That's just looking at autism, right? We're not going to be able to function as a society if this continues. And it's all going up. Every single chronic disease, the rates are going up, and it's happening younger and younger and younger and younger. And that's been going on since the 1940s. So this is the single biggest issue facing the country.
I want you up there, and I want you in those conversations because I know that the biggest priority is excess linoleic acid, excess omega-6, excess seed oils, and that includes we can't hit everything at once, but if we focus our target on seed oils, that's where
Well,
the elephant in the room is. That's where all
that is the biggest low-hanging fruit on
yeah,
this issue, no question
yeah.
about it.
And going off on some of these other tangents would distract us. So we need to be focused on what's really hurting people the most, what's harming the children the most, and that elephant in the room is the industrial seed oils and other excess omega-6 food products. Hey, I just talked to some fantastic folks in academia who've been working on this issue for decades, and they are still thrilled at the increasing worldwide attention that they're hearing from in academia and the NGO world and all these other people that you would normally think wouldn't talk about seed oils, who are actually getting on board with the data that we've been spearheading. So these conversations are actually happening even in areas that are not related to where we think, like with this MAHA thing and all this, it's actually happening. And a big issue that I'm going to keep bringing up is the role that omega-6, and you've talked about it in different ways, but we had Professor Bruce Hammock on, and he showed the data at UC Davis that he's worked on, showing that the excess omega-6 from seed oils is directly linked to the opioid crisis in the sense that it contributes to the chronic pain problem, which is what fentanyl is. And that's a number one thing, one of the top 5, 10 things you would always hear Trump and JD Vance always campaign: the fentanyl crisis, it's killing us, it's killing us, it's killing us. It's seed oils. The seed oils cause and drive the fentanyl opioid crisis. You strike at the core or you miss the whole point.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah,
Tucker,
yeah. And, that's why a huge part of this is just getting the message out, because folks, especially folks in medicine, don't understand how all these different things are tied together.
So if you're, what was that other law? I think I started to bring it up, and I didn't do it yet. You told me there was that carcinogenic law that says if something's carcinogenic as a known carcinogen, you're not allowed to put it in food. And
well, there's a law in the United States that says anything that's been shown to be a carcinogen in animals is not allowed to be sold as a food in the United States.
Has seed oils been proven to be that?
Yes.
And you have the citations and everything for that?
Plenty.
So what's your message?
The World Health Organization has come out and said that cooking with seed oils is a cause of lung cancer.
So what's your message to the Trump world right now? They're trying to, it's a typical rat race.
Well, again, we gotta, it took a long time to get trans fats out of the food supply. If you look at the research, seed oils are worse than trans fats, right? Mustard oil is illegal in the United States because it's supposed to cause cardiovascular disease. And if you look at the research there, seed oils are worse than mustard oil. So we have 2 illegal fats, both of which are better for you than the seed oils that are legal in this country.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, Tucker Goodrich. Any final thoughts, or do you want to address the camera and look straight at the American people and tell them what needs to happen if they want to help make America healthy again? Give us your final thought.
Make America healthy again is such a fantastic slogan. I gotta say, I can't really top that. And the fastest, easiest way for us to do that is going to be to get seed oils out of the food supply.
I appreciate your time, Tucker, and I hope that you and other friends that we're always in dialogue with are able to help have an opportunity to make that happen. It's got to happen. This is our chance before we get those guys that want to get us all eating bugs and slop again. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
we don't have time for that.
Thank you for having me on again, David. It's great as always.
Thank you, and follow Tucker Goodrich on Twitter and your Substack, where we can find it. What is it again?
tuckergoodrich.substack.com. And I've got links to my YouTube videos and everything else up there. And obviously, I'm very active on X as Tucker Goodrich.
And folks, we continue to break news on this show. This is breaking news. Tucker Goodrich willing to help if called to by his country to help. He is willing to do it. We got to get this message out there. So share this video, like it, reply it, quote, tweet it. Let's boost the signal here to get through all the noise and confusion coming from the establishment and some of the alternative world that gets confused about what the answer is. It's the seed oils. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what they used to say. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
That's the old way from the 90s that Clinton used. And we need to boost this message. So let everybody know we got to assemble a real dream team behind the scenes to get this thing really off the ground and successful. And if it doesn't happen, it's okay. We're still going to win because we're going to control the conversation culturally because the facts are on our side and the truth will set you free, even from seed oils. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.